How are you, Bilal? How's everything?
I'm good, thank you very much.
I'm very excited to have you. We're kicking off this podcast, and my goal here is to talk to emerging market founders, getting to know them, getting to know their journey. And our theme for this season is graduated, which is talking about moving from one stage to another. And to kick it off, I really believe I will do you this favor if I introduce you. I feel like best introduction comes from the source, so I will leave it to you. But really start from the beginning. Really start from as early as you can, growing up all the way to like what led to MaxAB and what led to your journey. That would be fantastic.
Sure. So my name is Belal El-Megharbel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MaxAB, and we'll get into that in a second. I was actually born and raised in Alexandria, and then I moved to Cairo when I was 13 years old. So I moved around quite a bit. I've been to 6 schools and 2 universities. So half my class in Egypt was with me at one point in my life in one of the classes that I've been at. And then the only time I left Egypt was to go straight to college. After spending 2 years at AUC, I went to Virginia Tech, did that for 3 years, and then I've always wanted to come back, so I came back as soon as I finished. I love the region. I believe that there's a lot to be done here, and I believe that there's a lot of people that have gotten very interesting exposure that they can somehow benefit the region from, and I hope that one day I achieve that. Back to my journey, before leaving to the US, I actually have started working for the family business, doing everything in the steel industry. I did imports, I did exports, I did manufacturing. I did a bunch of random other jobs on the side. And then again, I left. I came back in 2014. I started another trade financing business for steel, even though I don't like steel. But that's the only thing that my dad knows how to do. And he had retired after exiting that business. So he went crazy when he retired. So I wanted to get him back to work.
I see.
So I said, this is the only thing he understands. So let me start another business in the steel business, even though, again, I don't like it at all. Did that for 6 months. He joined me. 6 months later, I left. And during that period of time, I had actually came up with the idea of MaxAB. As any normal 20-year-old Egyptian guy, I will spend time smoking shisha with my buddies at night after work, and by complete coincidence, the 3 of them used to work for FMCGs, and I kept hearing about how inefficient that business could be, and it was very surprising that innovation have not touched this business for so many years, even though it's the single biggest business there is in the entire Middle East and African region.
Wow.
1/3 of the GDP of this part of the world is retail. Half of it is food retail alone. And the way this business has been run did not change. Now, I'll pause here because I actually did not start MaxAB at that point of time, even though I had created the pitch deck. And then I realized that I had no clue how to build a tech business. Neither was the market ready, because at that time the fuel was subsidized by the government. So in essence, the distribution business was subsidized by the government. So a lot of people will not care about efficiency if your business is subsidized by the government, right?
Yeah, fair point.
So I said, that's not the right time. Neither do I know how to build or scale a tech business, yet alone in the Middle East, where at that point of time, there was actually almost zero. There was Souq that got acquired later by Amazon, and there was a bunch of smaller ones, but there's no one that had made it really, really big. And then I came across Careem, which was a very interesting company for me at the time. Uber was the best funded startup in history. This business has became very sexy and hot. It was attracting great talent, but for me, Careem was the local champion from the region and the underdog, if I may say.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a part of that. How would you go head to head with the best funded startup in history? Was quite a challenge that I wanted to take, and I knew that I was going to learn a lot there. It's just, that's how I felt from the outside. So I actually kept knocking doors for whoever can put me in touch with the team on ground here. And I got to meet the managing director at the time. And I was looking for any job. And they actually hired me as their general manager for Alexandria.
Nice.
Because I'm from Alexandria, kind of, even though I haven't lived there since I was 12 years old or 13. But somehow they gave me that job. I was 24 years old at the time. And I was very grateful for that experience because I spent actually only 16 months in Careem, but I've learned way more than what you would learn, in my own humble opinion, in 3-4 MBAs, right? It was a very interesting challenge and I was very grateful for it. And after this period of time, a very interesting thing happened, which was the gas subsidies, the fuel subsidies were removed. What we thought was removed at the time ended up being only slight removal. And the dollar also was floated, or what we thought was a floated dollar at the time. And I had learned one thing or two about scaling a tech business. So I pulled the pitch deck out of the shelf and I went to raise some money to launch MaxAB. That's how MaxAB was started.
And MaxAB now is like over 7 years old, right?
Not quite. Next month, next month almost we're gonna be 7 years old. Yes.
Well, congrats. I really think running an operational business is a huge, and I come from the software side, so I feel like my life is much easier in comparison to any operational thing. But I mean, I feel there is two sides to every spectrum in that. But you mentioned something in the beginning that's really cool. You said something about loving the region, loving, like you think the region is brewing something special. Where is this coming from? Is this like an upbringing thing? Is this an observation, like how this happened?
It might be emotional. However, I'm not a very emotional person, so there has to be some rationale. I've never thought about it. It's just I feel that connection, and when you look at the numbers, you realize that the opportunities here are endless. Because when I was living in the US, what was my problems? I had no problems, right? So to solve a problem, like to start a business, you have to be solving a problem, yet alone a startup, right? So over there, I couldn't find the problems, but here nothing worked. So I was like, that's so many opportunities. Anything that I will do will actually add value. And once you add value, you can build a great business behind it. Now I understand we're not in the charity business. So that business needs to be sustainable at the same time for it to grow on its own feet, right? So that's very important for me as well. It's to build something that will sustain and create impact at the same time. That's pretty much how I was thinking about it. And I love complex problems. And this sounded like an interesting problem that technology can actually solve. And what was very also intriguing to me is that I wanted to figure out, how do you build actually a technology solution for out of this region that actually is built for this region and the problems of this region, right? And if you think about it, 92% of the groceries being sold in Egypt are through mom and pop shops. They're not through the online players. They're not through the organized big stores, right? They're through those mom and pop shops. That's something that is very unique to our part of the world. You don't find that in the West. There's still bodegas here and there, right? But they contribute a very small amount of the economy.
That's fantastic. That's really like that's very fascinating thing. But I wanna figure out, like, because you mentioned the pause, right? Like you said, the idea or the sector, you observed it first. You thought it's a good idea to work on that, the digitalization of supply chain, very untouched, extremely untapped market. But then you took a pause and you went to Careem first. And then you felt ready, you kind of graduated or emerged out of this shell into the MaxAB thing. What caused the tipping point,
Careem, again, was a very rich experience because it combined massive scale. We were scaling 30-40% month over month. And these numbers, again, back in 2016, nobody have heard about these kind of growth rates or how they're actually possible. I understood that profitability is important, yet growth is also very important. So how do you actually invest in growth rather than just throw money on ground? And the Careem management team was very open to the ideas of trying everything. So we tried everything, right? Which is a very different logic. Like you won't find a normal brick and mortar business that is telling you we're trying this, and that, and we're willing to invest tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars till we figure out if it's gonna work or no. That mindset was not there. And also I learned a lot what not to do as well. And everyone should take that part out of every experience. You go into a place, no matter how many great things there are there, there's obviously things that you think can be done differently. You learn yet after why they had to be done this specific way. But I think I figured out what would work for those different customers. How do I apply how I have observed product and tech team build those technology solution. A very simple example was Careem launched cash rides way before Uber did, just because that was a problem in our region that a startup coming from abroad will not actually understand as quickly and take those decisions as quickly as we did as a local or a regional company, right? So all those adaptations I've learned. Again, you cannot spend as much money as we have spent in the ride hailing business and not learn a lot of things, right? And the other thing is, what I really learned there is the importance of talent, because when we were hiring, nobody have done it before. Not a single person we have hired have done anything close to ride hailing before. So I was always looking for bright minds that just want to figure it out, no matter what their experience was, right? So the importance of building capable teams and building cultures is also one thing that I captured from that experience, because this is what it needed to take to build that new business that was globally less than 5 years old at the time, or less than 10 years old at the time, in a region that was not used to that.
And did you feel like how long it took you to reach that level of a culture with MaxAB? Like, when did you feel like the culture is actually inducive to talent? It's like attracting talent.
I think it started from day one, because again, I think of my role as very simple. I fundraise and I hire and I build the culture that allows this talent to thrive and use that money wisely, right? So this is my job, right? So if I fail at any of these, I might as well not be there, right? I do not run anything with my own hands, not because I like the big picture and all this fancy stuff. It's just because it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for you to keep buying. I used to buy the inventory myself. Today we have a team that does that, and they are much better negotiators than myself, right? And if you have the right people in place, and that's not an easy job yet alone in the region, it's a full-time job for me to focus on finding the right people and putting them in the right seats, and finding the capital that is willing to scale and back this business for a pretty long journey, right? At the end of the day, the region actually have not seen that many exits yet, right? So I just think back then, when we were raising big amounts of money from people that have never invested in the region, and a big part of our investor base had never ever invested in Africa or the Middle East. And we had to convince them that in this region you can build proper scalable technology solutions and tech companies that can compete at one point at a global scale. Now we still need to win locally before and then regionally, and then go beyond, hopefully one day. But that takes all my time. I sometimes find some problems very intriguing that I jump into them, but I try to the best of my ability to let the team do their thing.
Nice, very cool. And I think you mentioned something really really interesting about like number of exits in the region and all of that, and raising capital as well as like an ingredient part of like what you do, like capital and hiring. When did you feel you're ready to do your first raise, and when after that it felt like the readiness journey started to flourish?
Look, it's sometimes it's a blessing that you don't know what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of people, if they understand what they're getting into, they will probably not start companies. It's way more painful and difficult sometimes than people think. But I was blessed not to understand that how complex this would be. And to be very frank and honest, we started at a very good time, which is more important than the idea and how bright the team is, in my humble point of view. And companies like Careem and Swivel at the time have paved the way already. So Careem at the time had raised over $500 million, I believe, all in all. And then Swivel launched, and then they raised a big amount of money. So they made my life easy, to be honest, because they were bringing attention to the region. And that's one thing that I try to the best of my ability to do as well, is like, how do we become a part of paving the way for the next generation of startups to come? So I think the long story short is, I don't think I felt I'm ready from a fundraising perspective. I was like, let me go and see how this thing works. I've never raised a penny in my life before, so I don't know how this process is. I was very lucky with early stage investors that believed that this model would work, and that this team that we put together will be able to pretty much run that kind of business. And then, to be very honest, fundraising was not very difficult for the very first, I think, up until 2022. We were pretty much blitz scaling. The business model was pretty hot at the time. And we were executing quite well behind that business, and the tides were just high, right? And a lot of people think it's a lot of hard work, which is true, but you kind of have to get lucky, right? The smartest people I met in my life understand that it's not all about them and what they've been able to accomplish. A lot of it is, if you put the effort to be at the right place at the right time, sometime you just wait for your luck and it will show up.
But you still put yourself in the position, so
you have to, of course. You have to do everything in your power, but that's not enough.
You gotta get yourself in the right location, but then you gotta wait and see how it happens. And let's kind of get into the controversial side of things. After 2022, when the tides are now lower, things changed. How are you looking at other startups? How you're looking at the investors? What's your view now?
Sure. So I think 2022 onwards, the global market slowed down because of the geopolitical reasons, etc. Egypt specifically was not a very hot place to invest for one reason or the other, and because B2B e-commerce was the easiest business on earth to scale GMV in, and everybody was valued at GMV only multiples at the time. There were so many players that came into that place, and then the market suddenly decided that investing is not a very important thing to do these days. Most of the investors were like, "What? Let's wait and see." And on that business model specifically, which I believe is the right thing to do, by the way, because I think our business in our part of the world is very similar to B2C e-commerce in the Western part of the world, where before 2001, there were so many companies selling books online. After the .com bubble, only Amazon survived, right? And pretty much, I believe that the exact same thing will happen in our part of the world, that there was... Before 2022, there was so many people selling groceries to retailers. After 2022, very few companies will survive. And those are the companies that have the grit to keep going and have been building fundamentals all over these years, not just scaling GMV, right? And then the tides will turn again, right? This is what we've learned, right? People believe that this is the last bubble. They said that in 2001, and then they said that in 2008. And people are waiting for the AI bubble to burst as well. And people will also forget, and there will be a fourth and a fifth one, right? This is just the nature of our business. our part of the world have not seen that many cycles. We did not witness the dot-com bubble. Very few markets in the Middle East and Africa were exposed to the 2008 financial crisis as well. So, but that one was felt because now, over the last 5 years or so, we have been growing local champions and local tech companies that survive on fundraising for their first 5 to 10 years before they're able to turn those businesses profitable, which is, as you would know as well, is the nature of figuring out everything new, right? It needs capital to fuel the talent and to fuel the experiments that makes you figure out whatever your business model is.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. But what about the filtering effect? Like, so you talked about some people survive out of the crisis and then they kind of become winners, or let's say there is a dichotomy of like winners and losers after a period of crunch or a shift in the market. Do you feel like the market got filtered now? Do you feel like survivals are only around, or like
No, I think there's still more unfortunately companies that will not make it, and then there will be some companies that make it as well. I just think again it's beyond my pay grade, so I try and not to think a lot about it because there's a lot of geopolitical factors that are happening around the globe that a lot of people, every single person I meet now thinks his company is not very certain about what they're doing, their lack of direction, etc. And I genuinely think it's normal. Like not a lot of people have seen this kind of World War III, if I may say, that does not include, actually now it includes, unfortunately, a lot of tension and blood in some parts of the world, right? But even in the markets where there's no conflicts, everybody is impacted by global tariffs, by changing in the macroeconomic situation significantly, etc., etc. But again, those things I'm not too smart to understand, so I try not to think about them. I just try and figure out how am I going to navigate this uncertain times in a very uncertain region.
Moving on to a very interesting topic, which is the mix between operations and technology. And one of the things I'm a big fan of was MaxAB, particularly an extremely technology-driven company for an extremely operational business, which is like an extremely tricky balance to figure out. When did you feel, and especially protecting the company from being taken over by the operations, which happened to a lot of operational companies, right? When did you feel like the company is actually technically mature, technologically ready to tackle the issue?
Look, I think we're not there yet. We will never get there. You're always optimizing, and there's something new in the technology world that comes up that you need to implement to help your business. I think we took a philosophy of what works in other parts of the world will not work here. People automate for different problems, right? In different parts of the world, we automate for accuracy more than to save costs, right? Other parts of the world, they automate to save costs. Some parts of the world, if you don't have the most sophisticated technology ever, probably Amazon, Facebook, or Google already does that, so just don't even launch, right? Again, here, very little things work, so you can start by a real minimal viable product on ground, and then we segregate the business teams or the operational teams from the tech teams, who will figure out what's happening on ground, and then they would come up with solutions using technology after they have seen with their own eyes how the operational things work. I think it's always a challenge and a struggle, and nobody gets it perfectly on like what kind of weight do we give to the operations versus the technology, and there's always a right balance. And as I was telling you earlier, like sometimes actually technology doesn't make sense. You cannot force technology everywhere, right? And coming up with this kind of culture in the company where if it does make sense, we're going to use it. We don't build technology for the sake of technology. We build technology that solves very specific problems, and finding and nurturing this talent was actually pretty challenging on both sides. On the operational side, that can work with tech teams to build solutions that can scale and solve problems, and at the same times uh, tech teams that can understand the complexities of what happens on ground and what data is not there that we need to capture, so that once we capture, we're able to optimize on it. So I think we luckily have had enough humility between both teams to come to a table and have a conversation so that we can figure this out. I also believe that there was no clear playbook, so we had to try a bunch of things until we landed on the culture and the mode of operations that we have now. And again, at the end of the day, we just put the retailer first. Whatever solves this problem, whether it's an operational thing that we do or a technological thing that we do, it's about solving the problems of the retailers.
Nice. And are you going through the pressure of AI and everything gotta be technological, automated, intelligent, whatever buzzword that
Yeah, I think
AI adds to things?
it's definitely something on top of mind, because you always need to be ahead of the curve. So if there are different technology solutions that was not available to us, not even from solving the specific retailer's problems, which I can tell you a little bit about that down the line, but as how we run the organization itself, right? How are we making knowledge available? How are we making the information available to the person taking the decision as quickly as possible, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of these things that and a lot of AI that we use to run the company, not just to solve the problems for the retailers themselves. But we try not to get distracted with those fancy hype things. Some of it is really real, right? And it works and it generates a lot of impact. Just to give you an example, we have completely automated our pricing, and there's an algorithm that prices all our 5,000 different products in all our markets, right? This is something that was not easily done 10 years ago. Today, we actually have that live on 100% of our products, right? So we try and use them where they make sense to us and not to waste time when they are just fancy tools that work for other people but not for us.
Fair. And I think, again, getting back to this delicate balance between technology and operations, and again, I'm very fascinated by any any level of like inserting technology in the operations piece, in building the company culture. And getting back to building the company culture, how did you find this talent that was like operation, but they can understand the technical team, and technical, but they can understand the operation team? Like, is this something related to hiring? Is this something related to skill set? Like, how did it happen?
I think first and most important thing is people's attitude. I think people that again have enough humility to know what they know and what they don't know is the first thing we look for, right? People that want to just figure it out and are not fixated on this is how it's done, whether on the technology side or on the operational side. And when we start talking about, I'll tell you how this becomes problematic down the line, when there's too much creativity also. And then you get to a point where, okay, this is how it's supposed to be done for us now. We've experimented enough. Let's just focus on one single operations process, etc., and just do it and do it very right. And then we can innovate somewhere else, but we cannot keep innovating in things that already work just for the sake of innovating in it. And those come with M&As and expanding into different markets. That this way of doing things works really, really well in the early days when you were figuring things out. Now, when you have thousands of people scattered over 3 different markets and 3 different business lines, right? You just need to put things into a different perspective and become a more systematic, organized company, and then figure out where are we going to do the innovation, because you always have to, right? So how I keep some teams running as fast as possible and figuring it out and saving the day every day, making sure that the trains are running on time, as we like to call it. And then there are other people that are coming up with new innovative solutions that the retailers need. And then how do we embed that within the normal day-to-day is something we're figuring out today.
Nice, nice, nice. And I'm still can't wrap my head around the M&A piece. So let's talk about that. How many acquisitions so far? And because you did one merger.
We did one merger,
Yeah.
and then we had done an acquisition before it, and we did a third acquisition after that merger, right?
So almost once a year.
Almost once a year
Yeah.
over the last 3 years, yeah,
Very cool.
and some more cooking as well.
Very good, very good. And when you're talking about the culture, you're talking about the systems and the innovations, the systems, and then you bring on board another company integrated into that well-oiled machine, which is a very, very difficult thing. So, like, what is the recipe for that? How did you feel like you're ready for it? Well, tell us more maybe about the first acquisition.
Yeah. I think again it's similar to starting a company where you actually sometimes just don't know what you're getting into, and you're not. No company will feel that we're ready for this. I don't think they work this way because every companies are very different. You just again have to approach it with an open mind. First of all, understand what do you want from this acquisition. And do you want this team or you do not want this team? There's a lot of things that we've learned by the time we've done the third one. How do you create a structure that will absorb those new colleagues, and how are you going to integrate the technology, etc.? So I guess everyone was very different. I think also people they are complicated things to do, M&As, but people overcomplicate them, and sometimes the problems come from areas that you do not think the problems are going to come from, versus other things that everyone tells you this is going to be a problem, and they end up not becoming a problem. But if I may say, what I've learned over doing those transactions is like, know what you're getting into to the best of your ability. Humility, again, for the third time, is very, very important in these things. And then let things take its time. Anything that becomes problematic, if you approach it with the right mind, then it takes its time. The team put some effort to make sure, not some effort, you need to put a lot of effort to make sure that the colleagues you're bringing on board are going to be taken care of. They're gonna have to understand what the culture that you have, and how do they blend into that, and that just doesn't come naturally. You need to put some effort, and once you put the effort, the rest comes with time and observation, right?
Did you regret any of the mergers you did? Like, I mean, very controversial, but
No, I think we could have done them better,
Okay.
right? I don't regret them. I think some of them were done out of necessity. Some of them were great opportunities. I don't regret them, to be honest. I think as painful as some of them was, but after they've been completed and the dust have settled,
Yeah.
I was pretty satisfied with those decisions.
Nice, nice. So you looked back and kind of felt good about the result, but you still wanted them to happen differently, or you could have
Yeah,
been
they
done
could have done better.
Nice.
They could have been done better for sure. For sure.
Well, speaking of hot takes, listen, like as a founder, there's always, and I think all founders are opinionated in one way or another. And there is always the dance between like founders and talent, founders and capital, founders and the business. And we talked a lot about the business, but let's talk about talent a little bit. In your point of view, who were the best you worked with, and who were the worst in terms of like what differentiates between a really good talent and a really bad talent? Like what works and what doesn't, basically.
So I think what works the most is humility and attitude. These things are critical. Actually, if you don't have them, it's just not going to work in an early stage company that's still trying to figure things out. Specifically, that you again are doing something that there's no playbook, right? So the talent that write playbooks is very different than the talent that operates playbooks. And the challenging thing is, as the company scales, not everybody is able to adjust, and that's okay, and that's normal. Some people will figure it out. Some people doesn't even want to figure it out. They enjoy the other parts of the business more, the figuring things out in the early days, etc. Some people know how to build processes that can scale pretty massively. So I think again, humility and attitude is the thing that we look for the most when we are hiring people. Specifically, that we have very different business lines now and very different cultures within the markets that we operate in that needs to be figured out.
Yeah. And what about the bad side? Like, what would you avoid at any cost in hiring? I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of the opposite of the attitude, of
Yeah,
course, but
exactly. So I think we do not tolerate cultural issues whatsoever. If you are going to impact the culture negatively, there is the tolerance over the years have become lower and lower and lower,
nice.
right? Because you learn that that's the most important thing, right?
How do you measure for that?
I think you have to be very clear as a company on what you appreciate and how do you want the work to get done, right? And people fall in line with that and they behave in a specific way. There's so many things, right, that we can speak about.
Let's get into some of the hot takes about investors, right? Bad investors, good investors. What would be the most valuable thing you received from an investor, and what kind of practices that added a lot of value to you, and what also on the other side wasn't the
Very
thing that
helpful.
were, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot of this and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I think our region is pretty new to this part of the business. So I think as much as startups are figuring it out, funds are also figuring it out, and funds that are also coming that knows that business but are coming from the outside are trying to figure out, okay, how do we make money in markets that have very little liquidity, etc. What sizes do those companies needs to be at, and what are these options that are more limited than in other parts of the world? So I think it's been quite a journey. We've dealt with so many investors up to this day. I think some of them know what they're talking about, right, and some of them unfortunately don't know, but they don't know that they don't know, and that's where it becomes pretty problematic. So yeah, I think some people that come and tell you this part we don't understand, right, is music to my ear. Unfortunately, from an investor perspective, you hear that very little. Right? So everyone thinks that they know the answer, and then when you have to deal with so many people, with every one of them thinking that they know the answer, but none of the answers are the same. So what am I supposed to do now? Right? You run into these problems more often than you think, and I don't think it's a problem in our region. I think it's a problem globally. It might be more severe in our region given how new our region is in that field. I also think you learn how to deal with those problems better. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to bring alignment between different investors. That takes away from the business, which is very unfortunate, but again, it's part of my job, so you kind of have to make sure that you're doing that and you're improving at doing that. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very cool. And what would be, like, let's say, most difficult in the journey related to dealing with capital? I know what it's unique to each founder.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, the one that is unique to you.
The most challenging things in dealing with investors, there's a lot of things that can be challenging dealing with investors. I'm just trying to figure out what's the most challenging out of them all. I think, to be honest, the biggest problem when the incentives are not aligned with investors, just speaking very pragmatically, becomes a very challenging situation, right? Of course. Because what's good for other investors is not good for those investors. At the end of the day, you have to take a call and do what is right for the business more than anything else. This is our duty as founders and the CEOs to do whatever is best for the company, disregarding of the circumstances or how hard those decisions are going to be for one of your investors or the other, right? Some of them pass and they're normal. Some of those situations get a little bit ugly. But I think when people understand that it's coming from the right place, over time we get over it and
Yeah.
we both move on. But yeah, it can get quite tough.
Yeah. And what's next for MaxAB? So what is the next graduation
I
going
think
on?
as we speak today, we are gearing up for profitability within this year. Right
Nice.
after that, we want to become what we call IPO ready.
Wow.
So we want to say that what do we need to do over the next 18 to 24 months so that we can IPO this business. Whether we're going to do that or stay private, the IPO is the most complicated thing to do. So if you are ready for this, you're ready for everything,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So this is our goal as an organization today. And the rest of it is just how do we keep serving those merchants better. We have emerged from a single country, single business unit into multiple country, multiple business units. Today, our fintech business is way bigger than our e-commerce business, and there are different components to it, and we keep launching new financial services to our retailer every single quarter. So that's something we're very, very excited about. That's from a product roadmap perspective. And the rest, again, how do we build an organization that can outlive us and can inspire people in this part of the world and create genuine, real impact to the people that need it the most is what always going to be what we're building towards.
Yeah. Pretty tough and pretty exciting.
It is exciting. At the end of the day, big problems are exciting for talent, and that makes my job easier to
Nice.
attract some of the
Yeah.
most talented people I've found in the region and globally. Is that we are solving a real, genuine problem that actually touches the lives of so many people, and any small improvement in it makes a massive difference to the communities that our retailers serve.
Very cool. Very cool. Any closing remarks, final thoughts?
I think we've covered a big part of it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
I
you.
hope that this is what you're looking for. I genuinely believe in the message that you're trying to give people here. I think the region needs to actually figure out how companies move from one stage to the other. I'm not going to claim that we are there already, but we are in the process of figuring it out.
Nice.
And if there's anything that we can be helpful to our part of the world, we'd love to help always.
Really, really appreciate you. Extremely insightful. Thank you so much, Bilal.
Thank you, Nader. Thank you,
Yes.
Nader.